Hey you guys, it's Therese and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my spooky book recommendations. So I kind of have, it's a fair amount of books, so I'm not going to try to talk too much in the intro right now just because I don't want to waste all of it trying to explain what this is about. But for those of you guys who don't know, I am a huge fan of Halloween, like unbelievably huge. So I do have a bit of book recommendations. Sadly, they're not all YA because I can't seem to find a really good spooky or spoopy book recommendations for specifically for YA. So if you guys have any of those, please leave them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's just jump right in. Alright, so I've kind of split this up into two different categories. One category is the books I have read, and the other category are books that I have not read. And so I kind of want to start this off with the books I haven't read because I'll probably get more in depth with the books that I have already read instead of the other way around. So the first book on the list of recommendations that I have not read is The Dark Half by Stephen King. And this book is about Thad Beaumont, yes, and he is a writer. Yes, he is a writer, and he likes to say, according to this, he likes to say he's innocent. And there's a lot of twisted monstrous murders that keep coming closer and closer to his home, and he wants to say that he has nothing to do with them, but then he realizes that they're all kind of related to his novel, so he can't disown the fact that he didn't do it, especially since there are a lot of weird random phone calls demanding total surrender. Yes. So this sounds really interesting. I got it from a friend, and Stephen King is one of my favorite authors, especially in terms of horror genre. I have a lot of Stephen King books in this pile, but I would definitely recommend this book. It seems really interesting. Oh, it's a movie now. It's a movie now. So hopefully I'll get into it probably next month. I know it's November next month, so I should be reading more Thanksgiving vibe kind of books. But who doesn't like a good horror story? So the next book on this recommendation list is Needful Things by Stephen King. You're gonna see a lot of Stephen King books, like I said before, so just get comfortable with it. But this story is about how you've been to this town before, and it gives you all of your desires and all of your riches, but I'm assuming there's a price, because there's always a price for this nonsense. I'm assuming there's a price because it's talking about evil is on a shopping spree out to scare you. So we'll see, but like I said, I'm really interested to read this book. I just got it on my birthday, so it's been a couple of months, but I was also reading it at the time, so I wasn't in the mood to read another Stephen King book that's 1,000 pages. Oh, it's only 700 pages. It's fine. So the next book on this recommendation list is Lisey's Story by Stephen King. Lisey's Story? Lisey's Story. I feel like Lisey makes more sense, but Lisey sounds more humanish and not creepy. But who knows? But so this one is about how her husband is a celebrated author and he dies, and then 2 years later she has to deal with the demons and how he how he ended up writing these books in a sense. Yes. Yeah, 2 years after his death, she has to face the demons that he created for himself, for his situation. And it sounds really interesting. It's all wintry so I might read this closer to December, which is really weird considering you should be thinking happy, beautiful time for December. And here I am thinking maybe I'll read a horror story. But it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's totally a-okay. So the last book on this books I haven't read yet part of the recommendations is the Oxford Book of English Ghost Stories, and this is kind of an anthology of ghost stories, and I've had this for a while, probably my freshman year of college, so it's been 3 years now. And it's not because I don't want to read it. No, trust me, it's been on my TBR for years, obviously, and I really, really, really want to read it. However, it's just if you get into a ghost story, you can't necessarily put it down, if that makes sense. I just want to keep reading and reading because they're all different ghost stories. So I feel I'll probably start cracking into this weekend and then kind of slowly make my way through it, but who knows, we'll see. Now moving on to the books I have read, and I will get into more recommendations and what it's about and kind of my ratings on it and what I recommend it. So So let's just jump right into it. But for the first book on this list is Horns by Joe Hill. Now, for those of you who don't know, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, so you see where this is gonna go. But basically, Horns is about this guy, Ignatius Parrish, and his girlfriend just died, and then I don't forget what he does. Yes, his girlfriend is dead, and he ends up waking up one morning with these like nasty little horns growing on his forehead, and he doesn't want to say ends up, but oh my goodness, but the kind of the horns allow him to see what the person really wants to see, like the things they're lying about, it lets him kind of see what he is, kind of hear their inner thoughts and what they want, and he's gonna use this power to find a way to avenge his girlfriend's death or figure out how she died. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily like spooky. It is very intense, so I wouldn't read it if you're pretty faint of heart, but I definitely enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite books that I started reading in college, and then the movie is great, so I would give this probably a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And if you haven't read it and you're looking for something that's kind of thriller-ish, spooky, but with a weird fantasy kind of horror aspect into it, I definitely pick this up. And then watch the movie afterwards, because there's Daniel Radcliffe. So the next book on this recommendation list is Carrie by Stephen King, and this is another one of my favorite horror kind of novels, just because it's such a timeless thing. When you think about Carrie, you think about the pig's blood and the telekinesis thing, and you just can't not read it. And this is, like I said, this is definitely one of my favorites. I would recommend it to anyone who wants to get into Stephen King but doesn't want to get into his thicker kind of thing, because he can get pretty thick with those stories. This is about this girl named Carrie. She's kind of an outcast. She is an outcast, actually. And she gets picked on by her classmates. It doesn't help that her mom is kind of religiously crazy, and she's not allowed to have any friends, really. But on the day that she gets her period, she finds out she has telekinetic powers, and it all kind of goes wrong. And so, like I said, it's another one of my favorites. I'm going to be saying this 10 times over. But it has a lot of mixed media. There are some, let's see. Yeah, there are some, interviews, some headlines, and I believe some, files kind of thing. So you'll be, it's not just a straight through read, and I definitely recommend it to, like I said, anyone who's not willing to start, who wants to start Stephen King, but doesn't want to get started into his, thicker works, like It, or, any of the books I listed before. So, yeah. So, the next book on this list is It, by Stephen King. Now, this is the last Stephen King book on this list, so you don't have to worry about being oh my god, Therese, why do you read so much Stephen King? But, this is another one of my favorites. It definitely has its moments where you're just oh, why? But I would recommend it. Now, for those of you who don't know, or who haven't seen the movie, which if that is the case, I suggest you pick up either the book or the movie, but I suggest you pick up the book first, because it's probably cheaper than going out to the movies right now. But for those of you who don't know, it is about these this group of children, I am not going to count, this group of children who encounters this kind of demonic presence who dresses up as a clown, who, Pennywise the clown, and they kind of have to figure out why these kids are disappearing and why this clown suddenly shows up, as well as kind of the history that this clown has to their town in Maine called Derry. And it not only follows them throughout their childhood, or this part of their childhood, but also when they're adults, which is a very nice kind of thing. Now, I would give this definitely a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not saying it's not his greatest work. I definitely love this book. I think it's a masterpiece. However, he does get on tangents where it goes really, really it's starting to pick up, and then it slows down, and you get a chapter of just their inner thoughts. And it was just a little bit of a hard read, considering it is such a long piece. But I definitely think you should go ahead and read it and pick it up. Probably not if you're... No, definitely go ahead and pick it up. It's a big read. It's not a very easy read either, but it's just an interesting read. And how Stephen King writes his characters is just absolutely marvelous. As well as the movie, not the old one, but the new 2017 one. So true to the book, and the characters and the actors are just perfect and brilliant. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it, and if you end up watching, or if you don't want to watch it before you read the book, pick up the book. You will not regret it, trust me, pinky swear. So the next book on this list is Macbeth by Shakespeare. Now I have the No Fear version because I needed it for class, but I wish I didn't have the No Fear version because the cover is not as aesthetically pleasing. But for those of you who don't know, Macbeth is basically about this guy named Macbeth, and he ends up killing the king for the throne, and all kinds of weird crap happens. Like some nightmares, some witches, which is why I think this is probably one of the better like Shakespeare plays to read for the Halloween time, because it does involve some witches, some nightmares, lots of blood, lots of gore. So let's see, what do I think about this book? It's been a while. It's been a hot minute since I read this book. I would definitely give this another 4 out of 5 stars. Like, I'm not a huge play reader, and the professor who taught me for this book was not like the person I would like to have been taught Shakespeare through, so it kind of dampened my reading. But I probably will pick it up again in the future and just reread it. But I would definitely like go ahead and pick it up. It's one of like those classic favorites no one can really say no to. So if you haven't read it, you'll understand why everyone says it's such bad luck, because Macbeth kind of screwed everything for himself. Alright, the next book on this recommendations list is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, I know I've mentioned Dorian Gray like probably 4 times since I mentioned it in my haul or my TBR in September. And I know, you're probably thinking, Therese, why do you keep mentioning this book? You've mentioned it 10,000 times, and it's just getting annoying at this point, and I'm gonna need you to start reading some other books. But I'm gonna tell you why. This book is a masterpiece. Like, I finished rereading it a few weeks ago, and I was just like, now I remember why I just adore Dorian Gray and Oscar Wilde, and why he's one of my favorite authors in like forever. And if for those of you who haven't seen my other videos, or perhaps don't know the book, this book is about Dorian Gray, and he gets his picture painted and realizes, oh no, I wish this, like, our places were switched. I'd stay beautiful forever while the painting grows old and ugly, and it'll be great. And his wish gets granted by some higher power. And it's like every time he commits a sin that's considered during wherever this time, I want to say the 1800s, I forgot. But during the 1800s, the picture continues to grow old and decrepit and ugly while he stays young. And it's very interesting because it's not only a masterpiece in and of itself, but also the fact that Oscar Wilde wrote this as kind of a pushback against the idea that art has to have a purpose, and instead he went with the l'art pour l'art's sake, art for art's sake. My French is kind of bleh. But yeah, so it kind of shows what happens when we do give art a purpose besides for just the aesthetic. So I definitely recommend it if you haven't. It's definitely 5 out of 5 stars for me. So pick it up. Just pick it up, and you won't, like I said, it's like you won't regret it. And I think it's gonna be a book that you'll enjoy. And it's not like a terribly difficult read. The language isn't as old as you'd expect. You'll enjoy it. So the last book on this recommendation is a YA book, and it was like a Tumblr favorite and a BookTube favorite, and now it's also there's also going to be kind of a companion series to it, so hopefully I'll pick that up soon. But that is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodgkins. I almost said Hopkins, but that's fine. So for those of you who don't know, it's a very creepy read. Like, it's very thriller, very horror. So this book is about Mara Dyer, and she wakes up in the hospital with basically no recollection of the last few days, and all she remembers is that her 2 best friends died in an accident while she survived. And on top of that, you get to see a lot of, like, since it is told in first person, you get to see a lot of like Mara Dyer's like thoughts and processes, and she's very unreliable, really unnaturally unreliable. And I think that's kind of what makes it kind of creepy, because there's a lot of things that are going on in this book that you kind of have to unpack, and it's just so great. We don't talk about the 3rd book though, however. No. But it's just so great that you can't like not be confused or be paranoid about it. It's just a creepy read, and I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's been a while since I've read it, so that's why I'm giving it the 4 out of 5 stars. But this is definitely, like I said, one of my favorites. Pick it up, read until like the 2nd book, and if you're feeling a little adventurous and want to see how the series kind of went, read the third book, and then pick up the Noah Shaw Diaries. Yes, the Noah Shaw Diaries, which comes out soon, which I'm really excited for because Noah Shaw in this book was just beautiful. So imagine getting his perspective, and it'll be even more beautiful because it's Noah, and I'm just so attracted to Noah Shaw. But yeah, that is it for my spooky book recommendations of 2017. So if I have any any reviews on these books, I will leave them down below, or like either Goodreads or my blog, or even a video. But for the most part, that is it for this video. Hopefully you guys found some inspiration to read with like Halloween coming up in the next 11 days? But yeah, 10-11 days. If you guys have read any of these books and want to give me your thoughts, the non-spoiler thoughts, because some people might have not read the book, or it's one of the books I haven't read yet, please leave them down below. Hit like to see more videos, and subscribe so you guys won't miss out on anything. But until then, I'll see you guys next week.